Today on the Servant Leadership Podcast, we have Super Bowl winner Don Beebe. Don is a true underdog turned NFL legend. Don's journey to the NFL is one of incredible perseverance, faith, and humility. From his small-town roots and unexpected path to professional football, Don's story defies the odds. Over the course of his career, he played in 6 Super Bowls, became a Super Bowl champion with the Green Bay Packers, and delivered one of the most iconic plays in Super Bowl history when he chased down Leon Lett, refusing to give up even in the face of defeat. In this episode, Don shares his unique perspective on character, faith, and leadership, both on and off the field. From his incredible NFL career to his work mentoring young athletes and coaching, Don exemplifies the power of never giving up and leading with humility. Join us for an inspiring conversation with a true servant leader. Thanks, Don, for being here today.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Chris. Thank you.
Your journey is absolutely incredible. When people talk about it, they talk about it as an underdog journey. Mm-hmm. Talk about your journey to the NFL and what that looked like.
Well, I'm going to give her kind of a Reader's Digest because it's a long one. But let's just start off by saying I should have never played in the NFL. My life is, it was very chaotic. I didn't take the normal 4-year college deal and then get drafted. I actually went to college in the early 80s, left after the 2-week camp, went back 3 years later. And there's some really compelling parts of the whole story in the sense of, now that I'm a college recruiter, starting a program and then leaving a program, I'm probably not going to know that kid's name, especially if I only came for 2 weeks. I would probably not know that kid's name a month later. Well, Western Illinois was a school that I left, and they called me back 3 years later. Why not the first year? Why not the second year, right? Well, God's timing is always perfect, and I've lived by that. And I wasn't ready for those first 2 years. And I went back 3 years, didn't know my eligibility clock was being used up. So I only had really 1 year left, and I played 1 year at Western. Then I played at a school called Chadron State, a really small NAIA school, totally separate from the NCAA back in the late 80s. And the reason I went there was the head coach recruited me 5 years previous when he was at Western Illinois. So I had a relationship with him, and I landed up out there. It was literally, I love Chadron, but it was the end of the earth. I mean, it was so far from home, and you look at it, it's a little small dot about 2 hours south of Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. So I landed up there and had a good year, but, NFL standard, who would know, right? So I get drafted by the Bills that year, their first pick. So it's a God story. There's so many elements to that story that I haven't even shared with you of going to the combine. How I got invited in the first place is a miracle. What I did at the combine was a miracle. But those things had to happen to be a first pick of the Bills in the 89 draft, because they didn't have a first or second round that year because I think it was the Cornelius Bennett trade or the Thurman Thomas trade, one of them. And then I was their first pick in the 3rd round. So kind of a crazy story. Wow.
I'm sure people along the way just said there's no way you're going to get to the NFL or just give up along the way or just the odds are so slim. How'd you deal with that?
Well, ironically, Chris, I never had to deal with it because nobody even said that, because nobody even thought that thought. Nobody knew anything about the NFL until I went to the combine. When I went to the combine, my world changed. Let me just tell you 2 quick stories. First of all, how I got invited to the combine. Think about this for a second. How in the world is a kid from Chadron State, looking like me, playing like me, going to get invited to the big show where only 300 guys can go, right? How is that guy going to get invited? Well, I had a personal workout for a guy by the name of Bill Giles, who was a combine scout at that time. God rest his soul, he's not here anymore. But he had been doing it for roughly 30 years. He sat me down at the end of the workout and he said, "That's the greatest workout I ever put a kid through." He says, "I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I got to get you in the combine. You have to be seen." Wow. That's what he told me. To his dying day, he never told me what I ran, but his wife gave me the stopwatch at the funeral. So pretty cool story. And then I go. So naive, no expectations. I didn't have an agent, so I didn't get to have running shoes sent to me like everybody else. I had to run my 40-yard dash in my flopping fishing shoes from high school. And my dilemma was, Chris, my right sole was half unglued. So when I walked, it flopped. When I ran, it really flopped. And so here we are. I run the 40 and didn't know this until years later. In Tony Dungy and Bill Polian were the two that told me. And this was like, oh gosh, 3 years after I was retired. So this happens in February of 89. I find out I broke the all-time record in 2001, maybe 2000. But that had to happen. I ran a 4.25 in a floppy fishing shoe, and that tied it with Dion that same year. He ran a 4.25 as well. That record stood for 17 years. I don't say that to brag. I say that because that had to happen. God knew that had to happen. You go in from shattering unknown, completely no expectations, nobody knows my name, to having no agent, probably the only player there that had no agent, and running a flopping fishing shoe, and then breaking the all-time record. Your life is going to change, okay? And no sooner did I get back to Shattern, I had to do there were 28 teams in the NFL in 1989. I had to do 21 personal workouts. Think about that. I mean, guys now, they'll do one and everybody's there. No, I had to do 21 and I had to be there, okay? And then landed up being the Bills' first pick. Just crazy story.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, even going through all that process, you never probably dreamed of what your career would look like, because you had a great career.
I did, yeah.
Your average, or the average NFL player's career, is much shorter than yours was.
Yep.
You got to play with two amazing teams.
Yep.
You went to the Super Bowl 6 times, I think.
6 Super Bowl teams, yeah.
You won the Super Bowl. That's just crazy. What did it feel like as you were actually living in all of that?
Well, again, when you have no expectations, you're kind of, there's not really, I wasn't really nervous or anything going to the combine. And then when I got drafted by Buffalo, I really didn't know what to expect. They flew me out the next day and I was like, wow, that's kind of weird. So I go in and then have to do a press conference, and Coach Levy's there and Bill Polian, the general manager, and, the whole audience and the media of all of Western New York. And my wife and I, we're just hanging out, I'm a very, I hope I'm a quiet, unassuming person. I don't like the stage. I don't like the spotlight much. I just like family. I like being at home. I like doing what I do. I'm a very simple man and living in a very complex world, the NFL. But I was very fortunate. You said it right, man. I couldn't have picked two better teams, man. Going to Buffalo, oh man, in the early 90s. Well, who could have thought that but God, right? And I go there, and just an amazing guys, amazing organization, and absolutely the most incredible fans. Western New York people are so genuine, so blue collar. They love their team, win or lose. And then I go to Green Bay. So it's like you can't pick two better teams to play for as a player. I mean, from a fan base and an organization and just what it should be all about in sports, I was fortunate to play at the two best.
Wow. I mean, when not many people can say they've been to the Super Bowl 6 times, even getting there one time is the majority of players from Pee Wee on up, their dream.
Yeah.
What did it feel like being there in all those games? Yeah.
So I'm going to set the record straight because this gets confused quite often. I'm the first player to be on 6 Super Bowl rosters. I was hurt. Mike Lodish was the first player to actually play in 6 Super Bowls. He played for Buffalo, and then he went to 2 with Denver back-to-back, which was a year after me. So I was the first to be on 6 rosters, teams, but didn't play because of hurt. Mike was the first to play, and then there's a guy by the name of Tom Brady that came along and shattered all those records. So, and that's, that's the thing. But for me, it was just, in Buffalo, I'll be honest with you, this sounds weird, and then I go to Green Bay. In Buffalo, it felt like it was part of the season. I mean, going to the Super Bowl is kind of like make your reservations in August, right? It was crazy, but we talked about it as players. We were going to go. And we were just dominant in the AFC. During the early 90s. So, you think about it, we played 5 seasons in 4. We played 5 seasons in 4. That's how many playoff games we played. And it was kind of a way of life in Western New York at that time. Our expectations were, we're going. Even though on the 3rd and 4th one, nobody in the country wanted us to go, we were going anyway. But we just had those kind of, and then we had the perfect coach. I mean, Coach Levy was so resilient and so whatever, we're going to do this. And he didn't worry about the past, and he just always had us in the right frame of mind. He was the perfect coach for the big, aura guys that we had, I wouldn't say attitudes, but just the big presence of a Thurman Thomas and a Bruce Smith and Jim. And, I think all the Hall of Fame guys are on that team. There's a lot, on that team. So we had some big personalities. But Marv had a great way of wrapping them all into one, and that was one unit going. So
on this podcast, we talk a ton about servant leadership.
Yeah.
How do you see that play out in the sport world?
Well, it can be hard in the world of sports because there's so much attention that you get when you're the leader. Some do, some undo. I look at leadership as this, and I've been very fortunate to have some great coaches and a phenomenal father who's still alive at 87. And then the ultimate leader that growing up in a faith base, and that's who I am, and it's all who I am, to be honest with you, is my faith, is Christ himself. I mean, he's the perfect example of a leader. I think the number one quality of all the great leaders I've been around, and I hope I exemplify this, is humility. Yeah. Nobody wants to listen to a person that has all the answers, or they think they do. They want to listen to somebody that's willing to listen to them. And he's a great communicator, or she is a great communicator. I think those two things stand out in the leaders that I've had. I try to do those as much as I can. I pray every day for discernment, humility, and wisdom. Those are the three words that I pray literally every morning for myself. And I think if I can have those three, then maybe I can be half the leader that my father was, or my high school coach, Coach Thorgensen, who's on my as a coach for me. He's my running back coach, and then Coach Levy. I mean, those are the three that stand out for me. So I just want to be humble in my approach with people.
I've heard you talk about character over talent in this dynamic of character. And I think sometimes people get character confused. What is it? From a sport world and from your standpoint as a leader, how does character play into all of this?
Well, it's easy to say what character is. It's harder to show you what character is. It's easy to sit here behind a mic and tell you what character is, and because I firmly believe that you are what you are at home. I can sit here in front of this mic and tell you I'm all this and that, and just ask my players, ask my wife, if I am those things at home or on the field. Because when you're caught up in the emotion of things, your true character is going to come out. When things are tough and aren't going so well, your true character is going to be revealed. It is. So that means in every game, your character is going to be revealed, good or bad. So how do I find character? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to sit down. I want to talk to them face to face. I don't want no Zoom call. I don't want to do even a phone call because I can pick up on a lot of things just how they sit in that chair. They sit up straight. Do they make eye contact? Are they constantly, busy with other things that are going on in their head? That's character. How they shake my hand tells me a lot about character. I'm hoping that their parents come with them on a recruiting trip. How they treat their mother. And how they treat their father when their dad's talking in that interview tells me a lot about their character. If they can't respect their father and their mother, they're never going to respect me as a coach. No way. And then a lot of things can be revealed on film. Meaning if I'm watching a film of a player, and if I'm watching the film of a player, I'm really interested in the guy. I let the coaches kind of, throw out things, and they know what to look for because we talk about this quite often. Because it is the absolute number one character we recruit, character. If they don't pass the character test, we move on. Before we even get to the talent and what they do statistically and all that, doesn't matter. They got to pass the character test first. Now, can you bet 1,000? Of course not. Okay, but we try hard, and we bet a pretty high percentage. So film, I want to see how they react to their success. It tells me a lot about their character. If they draw attention to themselves, probably not my guy. Okay, unless it's just an excitement thing, you can tell the difference. And what you see on Sunday afternoons, it's gotten more and more over the years. It's just all about themselves. I would never draft or trade for that guy. I can give you a lot of names that fit in that category. I think people know. People aren't stupid. People know. They're not coming here. Okay. And certainly if I was at an NFL team, I wouldn't draft them. And then more importantly, and this is where we really get kind of deep, is if I'm really serious with this guy and I'm about to offer him and I want him to come to AU a lot, I'm going to watch somebody else's film at the same position instead of recruiting that guy, because I know I'm going to see that guy at his best, but I want to see the guy I'm recruiting when I know he's not going to possibly be at his best. Meaning when things don't go well and the other guy's getting the sack, is he upset? Does he hang his head? Or does he go over and congratulate them? Does he really get excited for somebody else's success? Boy, I want a roster full of guys that really enjoy somebody else's success. But we live in such a me culture. I don't want a me culture guy. I want a guy that really genuinely is excited about somebody else when they have success. So, and you can find that. It's not hard. You got to dig into somebody else's film and watch that guy. If I don't see that, sometimes that's a red flag, but I'm going to ask him about it in my interview with him. And I'm going to say, and I'll point out sometimes the film. I'm going to say, so why would you act that way when that guy had the sack? Why don't you go over there and slap him on a can or something? His answer is going to be very, very revealing of whether we take him or not. So that's kind of where we start.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really inspirational. I mean, when people think of you, and I know you're way more than this, but they often probably think back to one of the greatest Super Bowl plays of all time, of you chasing down Leon Lett and stopping what was going to be a sure touchdown, right? And that perseverance, that character, when most guys probably wouldn't have cared, frankly.
Yeah.
How did that get ingrained in you? Maybe share about that play just so the audience understands it in case they haven't seen it, but also talk about how that got ingrained in you.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's talk about the play first. So we're with Buffalo. This is their third Super Bowl now. And we're in LA, okay, Pasadena, and playing in the Super Bowl. And it's late in the game, 4 or 5 minutes left of the game. The score is 52-17. We're losing. Game's over. There's no way you're going to come back in this one. Okay, even though a few weeks earlier we came back from 35 down. Okay, it's not going to happen with 4 minutes left. And I was doing a fly pattern, a go route down the left side of the field, and I turned and looked. I was probably 30 some yards down the field. Nobody really knows because I wasn't even on the camera, the Buffalo Bills camera. But it was at least 30 some yards. I turn around back and I look, and Frank Reich, who's the backup quarterback at that time, fumbled the football, got knocked out of his hands, and Leon Lett, the defensive lineman of the Dallas Cowboys, picked it up really quickly. It was like within a second or so. And he starts running for an apparent touchdown, and all I did was saw him pick it up, and I just started running as fast as I could. One of the morals of the stories of this is how you react to something is really your true character. I mean, you think about that for a second. If you have a minute or an hour or a day to think about it, most people with good character, they're going to ultimately make the right decision because they're going to think about it, right? But really how you think about it. You could be in a argument at home, okay, or with your team as a coach, or during the heat of the battle of competition. Your character is going to be revealed, no matter good or bad. I hope for the good most of the time. But hey, I'm human, just like everybody else, but I try hard to make the right call. And this is an instant where it happened as an athlete in a game. And I just reacted.
Leon Lett would have scored, but he slowed down to celebrate at the 5-yard line. And when he did, Don Beebe, hustling, stripped it away.
Now, why I reacted that way is the question I get a lot. And I always say 2 words, my dad. And my mom too, but my dad was the one that set the tone in the family. Just little things like, whatever you put on your plate for dinner, you're finishing it. It's not like you go over there, scrape this in the thing because you don't want it or you give it to the dog under the table. No, you're going to eat that, son. You start a team in the season and now you're in the middle of the season and things aren't going well. You think coach doesn't like you or you're not getting enough playing time. You're not quitting the team. That's not an option. Okay, you're going to quit on your team and halfway through the season? Who does that? No, that's not who you are, son. So it just started off with little things like that. That just became my character. And I tell people these things because you can't change your character overnight. You are who you are. It takes a process of going through these things. That's why it's so vital that parents raise their kids up in this type of atmosphere, that hopefully when they get to a situation in life that they're going to make the right decision. There's no guarantees on that, but if you raise your kids up right, you're giving them a far greater chance to making that right decision. And it could be a life or death situation. We're just talking football here and sports. That's huge. Okay. Now let me give you the inside story on this. And this is how God works. And I love how God works sometimes. Man, I get frustrated how God works sometimes. Okay. But I love how he works when it's all revealed. Here I am, I'm living my dream. I mean, when I'm 10 years old, I'm in the backyard. I'm Fred Biletnikoff for the Oakland Raiders playing in Pasadena. the old Kenny Stabler. And oh my gosh, I'm living my dream. I mean, can you imagine this? And my dream was Pasadena. That's Super Bowl. So playing a Super Bowl in Pasadena was everything I dreamed of when I was a 10-year-old boy and growing up. So here I am. I'll never forget it. I'm an hour before the game. I'm just walking the grounds of a mid-70s day in Pasadena. Oh my gosh, I was just taking in all the sights and the sounds, and just knowing that Garth Brooks is going to sing the national anthem. And oh, by the way, Michael Jackson's going to do the halftime show. I'm living it. And I'll never forget this prayer. There's certain prayers that we never forget. This was one of them in my life. I went to the 50-yard line. I was in half my gear, my pants and shoes, and had, my shirt that I wore underneath my pads, his pain, my gain shirt. And I said this prayer, simple prayer. I said, God, let me reveal you today more than me. This isn't about me, God. This has to be all about you. This is the biggest stage in sports, and I get to do this. I don't want it to be about me. Let it be about you. Well, I got up and I walked in. Chris, I'm not going to lie. I felt so good. I mean, there's times when the Spirit comes on you, you just feel great. That was me in that moment. And I just felt like when I was walking off, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to score the touchdown to win a Super Bowl in Buffalo. I'm going to be iconic in Buffalo. I'm going to make this one-handed J.J. Jefferson stab in the back of the end zone, get my tiptoes in the end zone, and at the end of the game, right? No, God gave me Leon Lett. Because how many people in the audiences that I speak to today or listening today, how many people can relate to a one-handed stab in the back of the end zone? Probably nobody. How many can relate to never giving up? Probably everybody. Because nobody's immune to trials and tribulations. We're all going to go through it. How you handle it through the trials and tribulations is how the outcome's going to be. My advice, be obedient to God, do God's will, and He will bless you. If you try to do it on your own, it's going to fail. Okay? So that's how I've looked at life. And then I see the result. Yeah, it would have been great to win a Super Bowl, and I know a lot of fans in Western New York are not going to like what I'm going to say right now. But if I was to do it all over again and have whatever happened, I would take the Leon Lett play over a Super Bowl championship of the one-handed stab, because I have seen for 30-some years now lives radically change because of Leon Lett play. I stand on stages and I see people and I see them they can't get over whatever situation they're going. Then they hear me talk about it. Some plain Jane guy coming out of nowhere, getting drafted by the Bills and then making this play in the Super Bowl. And oh, by the way, it changed Leon's life and mine as well. And so we all need to just be ready for that moment. And the only way in my mind that you can be ready is spiritually ready, because we're all selfish. We are. We all want what we want. Okay, that's our human nature. That's how we were made. That's okay. But it's got to be centered towards who gets the glory. And I don't want the glory. I don't. I want to give it all to Him. And through this Leon Lett play, it has given me so many times to help people in their daily walks. That, my friend, is the big picture, not the small one.
I love that. And recently you just came out with the Never Give Up Devotional. Yeah. Share a little bit about that, and then also the other thing you're working on. Yeah,
so I've got 2 devotionals. I never thought I would be a writer. I mean, I never thought I would have a book. So I had a book called 6 Rings from Nowhere that came out years ago, 2012, I think. It was, rewritten, and Jim Gibson, the publisher, did a great job with that. But just recently, in the last 6 months, I kind of felt led to do a devotional. Now, a devotional, this is not a normal devotional. Devotional, you pick it up off your bedside table and you read that devotional in the morning. It's scripture and it's great. Those are great. And then you'll have athlete that will write a devotional. But again, it's all about scripture and stuff like that. This one is very unique in a sense. These are instances that happened to me directly. God allowed these things to happen to me directly. I didn't make sure that you remember what I just said there. God allowed it. God didn't do it. God doesn't do those things. Satan does those things. God just allows it, and then His glory, Romans 8:28, is revealed, because for all that love Him, those things work out, right? But it's frustrating. And so I wanted to write one, and God gave me the Never Give Up play, so let's use it, right? And so that is the title of the devotional. But it talks about things that happened in my life that were just devastating. My financial guy taking my money. just certain things where like the Carolina store, when I went to Carolina for 95, it was this awful experience athletically, but it was a great time to grow spiritually. That who was my identity in? Was it in the coach's opinion of me? Oh my, how empty is that? No, my opinion and my identity is in Christ and Christ alone. So when I realized that, which I did, but I lived it here. I mean, until you live something, you're not really quite sure how you're going to react, right? Because initially I was upset and I wanted out and I was going to retire from after Carolina season. I wasn't going to quit because my dad taught me I wasn't going to quit. I was going to finish it out, even though the horrible experience that it was. But I stuck it out and I kept playing because God revealed to me, no, this isn't about you, Don, and this isn't about really football. This is about your platform, and I've given you one, and keep going. So I didn't quit. And where'd God take me? Oh, by the way, Green Bay Packers, which statistically I had the most catches, most touchdowns, and most yardage of any other year that I had in Buffalo, right? Oh, and then we won the Super Bowl that year. Oh, and we beat the Carolina Panthers in the NFC Championship game, go to the Super Bowl, because I got, God has a sense of humor, right? But again, I would have quit. I would have missed out on all that God had for me. And I think that happens so many times in people's lives that we just get caught up in our selfish thoughts and our self-pity, and we're pointing fingers at everybody instead of looking in the mirror. And I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to live the rest of my life. And boy, I would have had regrets if I would have, looking back on it now. And I just want to be an encouragement. So I wrote the Never Give Up devotional that came out 6 months ago. And I just finished a new one. It's called In His Image, a Father's Devotional. I had a great father. Okay. I try to be a resemblance of that. And then I have the greatest father in Christ that I read daily. And I want to write a devotional of how I got through these tough times scripturally and how I got on my knees. And it was not easy. Oh, believe me, it was not easy. I had to really, really dig deep. Okay. In some of these moments in my life, which everybody that's listening to this show right now can relate to that. Everybody. Nobody's immune to those tough times.
Even thinking through, obviously, you're a dad now. Yeah. And your son obviously followed some in your footsteps, obviously doing his own thing. But how did you think through servant leadership, being a dad? And obviously, I know you're so proud of your son being in the NFL and all of that. But how did you think through that?
Yeah. Well, some of these stories are in the devotional, in his image as a father. And I'm proud of my 3 daughters, too. They're incredible women. All 4 of them love the Lord with all their heart. Chad's story is probably more fascinating than mine, really. My story is coming out of nowhere. My son got kicked in the gut more than any person I think I've ever seen in life. 11 of 12 years, going back to his sophomore year in high school, all the way through his 4th year with the Minnesota Vikings, 11 of those 12 years, he was reconstructive surgery, season-ending injury. How in the world does this guy go through high school, breaking his arm, broke his collarbone twice, broke his foot? I mean, I could just go down the list of these things. Doesn't play half of his games of his high school career, get 8 Division I offers. That's insane. And then, how do I know that? Because I had a business called House of Speed that trained a lot of athletes that go through this process every year. Then he goes to Northern, has an average career really at Northern too. Okay. Because he was always hurt. Okay. He would be player of the week and then get hurt in that game. Okay. Against Bowling Green. Comes back, player of the game again, gets hurt again in that game. And his season's over. And then gets an opportunity to go to the Vikings off of the strength and conditioning coach, Brad Ort at Northern Illinois. He knew a scout at Minnesota Vikings, and he called him and said, you need to take a look at this kid. He gets hurt, sure. But this guy always bounces back. He never gives up. I mean, this guy you want in your program. He goes up there, and he makes the team as an invite, he's the 12th guy going into camp. And oh, by the way, who does he beat out? Think about this for a second now. Who does he beat out to make the roster so he can start playing on an active roster? Oh, a guy named Laquan Treadwell. Laquan Treadwell, you could argue, is the greatest wide receiver in Illinois history. Leads his team to a state championship in Crete-Monee. Goes to Ole Miss, breaks all the records at SEC Ole Miss, and then he's a first-round pick of the Minnesota Vikings. And now he's going in his 4th year, and Chad beats that guy out? I mean, come on, man. That's just crazy. That doesn't happen. And then he lands up playing 4 years, and 3 of them were on IR. Who keeps a guy around that's on IR all the time? God. You know, and I try my hardest to tell kids that I want people to understand that I, as your coach here at Aurora University, I'm not in control whether you play or not if you're a believer and you're really living that out. They look at me like, yeah, you are. I said, no, I'm not. If God wanted it, how do I know that? Because he did it for me and he did it for my son and he's done it for a lot of other people that I've seen. If God wants it done, there are no odds with God. I'm a living example of that. There's no odds with God. You can do it. So, and my son's story is an incredible story. He needs to write a book. I told him that. He really does but he is, you know what he's doing? He's doing a company called Lead a Legacy. And it's kind of like a Big Brothers, Big Sisters program where he mentors young boys in athletics, trains them, and then he mentors them. And it's going really well for him down in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm very proud of how he's just turned his whole story. He could have tanked it many a times, but he always picked himself up off the mat that very next day and says, yeah, God's got my back.
Wow. You mentioned House of Speed.
Yep.
And I know you've had an influence on thousands upon thousands and potentially generations, you know, when you look at some of the stuff you've done. Talk about why'd you start House of Speed and what was that?
Well, I knew when I retired from the pack in 98 that I wanted to be around sports and I wanted to be around mentoring through sports. So when I was training athletes in the late 90s, I started that company, House of Speed, with Dr. Jeff Shute, who's a good friend and he's phenomenal. He was actually trained me toward the end of my career. And I found out that after 6 years of doing House of Speed, that yes, it was mentoring and it was a go to kids' games, but it wasn't to the level that I wanted. I wanted to mentor and be at a more intimate level where I really got to know their families and the kid and being more involved in that person. And what better way to do that than coaching? And so after 6 years, I said, I got to get involved in coaching. I felt led to do that. And Aurora Christian Job High School opened up. I went over there to Aurora Christian and just see God work at Aurora Christian. Think about this, Chris, is they had no football field. They had no weight room. They had a universal weight set in the middle of the band room. They had 17 kids in the whole program at the first meeting they had in May of 2004. 17 kids. We ended up having 24 because I was just pulling kids out of the band room and the other room's like, hey, you're a football player. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. So we had 24. That team went 10-2 to the quarterfinals with really a bunch of kids that never played football much. And then to see it now and being the only team in Aurora history in Aurora is the second largest city in Illinois outside Chicago. And I think there's 8 high schools. Nobody in Aurora has ever won a state championship until Aurora Christian came along. They've won 2. I take no credit. All coaches can do is create a culture. All coaches can do is teach kids how to get more out of themselves than the normal way of thinking. That's all coaches really can do. I don't play anymore. X's and O's, throw it out the window. Talent, let's really kind of throw that out the window to a certain degree as well. What wins is your heart, your passion, and your mind. You think you can. You must get over those 2 hurdles. If you don't think you can, you got no choice or no chance. If you think you can, you got an outside chance. And then you throw that with passion and hard work and developing yourself in the off season. Yeah, now you're going to be pretty good. And I think that's what I've learned from great teachers before me.
A lot of people, I'm sure listening, have either bumped into people or at times felt like there's this defeatist mindset, right? Which goes along with the never get up. How do you instill that never give up mentality in your players now, being a coach, having worked with so many players over the years? Yeah,
that ain't easy. That's why first I think you recruit kids that think that way already. Doesn't mean they're all going to. And even them, I don't allow a kid to hang his head. If I see that a kid's struggling, let me give you an example. Gavin Zimmerman, our first quarterback here in 2019. Our first spring practices was in April of that year. Took the job in January that year. Our first practice was in April. First practice. Matter of fact, it was within the first 3 practices. I coached him on a certain thing, on timing of a throw, and I need you to deliver it here. And he kind of turned and kind of snapped at me. Not disrespectfully, was kind of like, I could tell he's been verbalized. Let's just put it that way, right? And I thought it was kind of odd and strange. And so I pulled him in my office afterwards. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to embarrass him in front of his teammates and say, hey, we don't act that way or anything of that nature, especially to your quarterback. Defensive lineman, I'm going, but not your quarterback. So I pulled him in my office and I said, Gavin, I thought it was kind of strange the way you reacted to me. And I just want you to know something. I love you. I care a lot about you. Oh, and by the way, you're my guy. You're the quarterback. Okay. I'm not going to bench you or anything of that nature. I need you to know, I didn't say this, but I needed him to know that I was in his corner. Every player needs to know that the coach is in his corner. It's kind of like parenting. Okay. You have to discipline them. If you don't discipline them, you get total chaos. Guys come and go as they please. I mean, that doesn't work. Kids come, your curfew's 11 and I showed up at midnight. Now, there's consequences to that, right? That's biblical, by the way. So, I got to hold the guys accountable when they cross that line. But at that same time, and this is where it gets confusing, with a lot of coaches, they got to know that you love them, because no players are going to ever listen to you what you got to say until they know that you care what you say, and that they care about the individual. No player is going to ever say, "Oh gosh, coach, I love you and I care about what you're saying," unless they know I care about them and I love them unconditionally. So I tell my team every single day I love them. Every time we break a huddle, I love you. They say it back. Every time a kid comes into my office in a one-on-one meeting, when they leave, they're going to say, I love you. I usually say it first to get it out of them because they're really quiet and nervous a lot of times. I don't want them to be. But they have to say, I love you. Okay. Even if they don't want to, because I just demoted them or something like that, they still have to say it. And it's become a way of life. Okay. So there's a lot that goes into getting the kid, but you have to start there. You have to start by the kid knows you can't cross a line. And the kid also knows I love you unconditionally. My dad used to spank me. I know this is kind of a 70s thing, okay? But my dad used to spank me, and when he used to spank me, after he would spank me, he'd say, "Son, I had to do that because I love you, right?" I never understood that until I had my own kids, and it's so true, because parents are completely opposite nowadays, right? First of all, they're scared to spank, and two, they don't think they should spank or discipline their kids, because what they don't understand is a kid wants to be spanked. He'll never tell you that. She'll never tell you that, but they want to be, because it shows that you actually care. Here's the problem with it. Don't ever spank or discipline out of anger. Let me say that again. Don't ever spank or discipline out of anger. Always do it out of love. So if you're in an angry moment because your kid just smarted off to mom, take a deep breath. Son, we don't do that. I'm going to talk to you later about that. Because right now you're really mad and you got to go and pray. Okay. You got to get yourself calmed down. And once you do, then you sit them down. You say, listen, there's consequences to that. Here's the consequence. Okay. You're grounded or whatever that is. And then you got to uphold it. Because as soon as you don't uphold it as a coach or a father, then the kid knows that. The kids aren't stupid. They know what they're going to get away with. So it shows that you care as long as you do it right.
Yeah. This is so good. I want to ask you 10 rapid fire questions.
Oh boy.
Where you just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
No, these are always hard.
Okay. The first one, who's the first person you think of when I say servant leadership?
Well, I mean, most of these questions are, I would tell you a biblical question would be Christ. Okay. But I'm going to give you one here on earth. A servant, I would probably say, my son, Chad.
5 words that most describe yourself.
Humble, hopefully. Competitive. Caring. Myself, boy, it's always hard to explain yourself. Committed. And I would say loyal. In the world of today's sports, the loyalty and commitment has gone out the window. With nil and transfer portal, I just had this conversation with the team the other day about what does loyalty look like? And I used 3 examples on our football team, and they were star players, and that could have left. Matter of fact, one of them had 4 Division I offers, FCS, and chose to stay. Who does that unless they're loyal? I'm hope I'm that.
Wow. Favorite author or book?
Oh man. Again, the book is Bible, but Dances with the Wolf is my favorite book. I love the movie. I'm kind of an Indian heritage guy. I was never the cowboy. I was always the Indian growing up. Probably because I have a little Indian on my dad's side, so I was kind of grew up that. So Dances was my favorite movie.
Okay. The next question was going to be favorite movie too.
Yeah,
so
that's my movie and book. Yeah.
Okay. Favorite food?
Growing up, Kentucky Fried Chicken, baby. Man. No longer can I eat that anymore by the buckets. Steak.
Okay.
I love a good ribeye steak with good juicy fat on it.
Favorite thing to do in your free time? Fish
with my family in the boat. Now it's grandkids, was my kids and my wife. Just quick here, my dad started a fishing trip with the family when I was 5. Original 5 kids, mom and dad. Mom and dad are still alive, 87, 86. We still take that same family fishing trip to northern Minnesota, and this is 62 family members go now. And nobody misses. I think we've had a couple, nieces and nephews miss over the years for whatever reason. One was pregnant, okay, and had to have a child, by the way. But nobody misses. Our family is very unique in the sense of, and that's because of the leadership of my father.
Wow. Favorite place you've been?
My ashes one day will be buried in the lake that we go to in Minnesota. So, that's my favorite place to go is the lake up there because I just love being on the water before the sun comes over the trees. It's my favorite time of the day, favorite place in the world. Outside of that, because that has family ties to it. Boy, I tell you what, Glacier National Park and Yellowstone, man, doesn't get much better than that place.
Yeah. Where's somewhere you want to go that you have not been?
Alaska.
Okay.
Yeah, my bucket list, number one bucket list, hands down, is to hire a bush pilot for 3 days, 4 days, maybe a week, pending, and fly over and say, land there. Well, let's fish there today. Camp out there. And if I can take my son with me or my wife because she loves to fish or somebody like that, it would be great to be able to do that. But that hands down would be it.
Wow. All right. Finally, best advice you've ever gotten.
Again, outside of biblical advice, follow God's lead and get on your knees and pray. E.M. Bounds has a great quote that I have in my office that he who, fritters away the freshness of the morning by putting other things first before Christ, lands up putting Christ on the table and never pulls him off. I don't want to be that guy. Okay, that's probably the greatest advice biblically, is communicate and treat people right. And I think that's the best thing you can actually do in your marriage. Communicate, treat her right. How do you treat her? Well, read the Bible. He'll tell you how. Treat her with respect and love. And just like God loved the church, man, that's the way you got to love your wife. And I try my hardest to do that as well. I have an amazing relationship with my wife. We've known each other since kindergarten. We were born in the same hospital, 8 months apart. I think God ordained this. Okay. I've known her for 55 years. Wow. Yeah. We've been married 37 of them. Yeah. So we met in kindergarten. So it's just an amazing thing with my wife, and she's an incredible woman.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on the podcast. Thanks for sharing so much. And I know people will be inspired by listening to your story.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Servant Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Be sure to check out the servantleadershippodcast.org for more updates and additional bonus content.